We're at the Environmental Performance
Correct.
Measurement System, the state of Florida, and you're David Struess.
And this is not Steve Adams.
That's not Steve Adams. That's correct.
This is Steve Adams' new boss or new deputy of the department, Lisa Edgar.
Lisa Edgar. Thank you for coming, Lisa. Please.
And thank you to the Ford Foundation, the Kennedy School, and Center for Excellence in Government. I've been involved in reporting for the better part of my career, going way back to an undergraduate stint at Indiana University School of Journalism and reporting for newspapers around.
Do you think you're going to get Lee Hamilton on that basis?
From there, I did a stint in Washington at the Council on Environmental Quality, where we were charged with preparing an annual report from the President to the Congress on the quality of the nation's environment. And more recently, working as the agency head for environmental agencies for 3 different governors. And I can assure you that this novel and new approach towards environmental reporting that we now have in Florida is by far and away the most significant and effective publication with which I've ever been associated. Back when I was a reporter, I would slog through government documents that were really dense, and I would search them for the relevancy. Why should the public care? Or alternatively, I'd immerse myself in agency publications, feeling that in the end I had just gone through the spin cycle. While I was in Washington, we did a workmanlike job describing the work of the various federal agencies and adding another line of historical data every year to tables. And our report was a big seller with reference librarians. I'm convinced it rarely, if ever, informed or affected any serious public policy or management decisions. I'd ask you to compare that with what we're doing in Florida today in terms of measuring environmental performance. Something that is, I think, recognized by my counterparts in environmental agencies all across America as probably being one of the most significant innovations in environmental management in the last 20 or 30 years. And why is it so novel? It's novel because it's done in a way that is timely enough to be relevant. It's focused enough and integrated enough to actually identify trends and tell a story. It's completely transparent, and it's even spin-free. But perhaps most important, it's actually powerful enough to allow us to change behavior. And that's because what we're looking at here is not just another report, it's really a very effective management tool. It's effective because it asks those big questions that really matter. It's effective because it has identified problems that would otherwise, I believe, have escaped our notice. And it's effective because those problems are now being solved. We also know it's replicable because I've been approached by any number of colleagues from around the country who have tried to steal my staff so they can go to their states and replicate the program. And I think at this point you're all familiar with the basic systemic approach of the report, asking questions like, how are we spending our money? How are we spending our time? Permitting, litigation, enforcement, technical assistance, and what are the measurable results? Is the air cleaner? Is the water cleaner? Is the land better managed? Are these obvious questions? Absolutely. Are they simple questions? Not really. They're not simple because they have never before been asked, and never before have they been asked and reported in the same document, and never before were they shared with the agency head, not to mention the public. But what is really significant is then every quarter we actually act on that report. We label every result as either being a good result, an area that needs to be watched, or an area that demands a focused effort until we actually make measurable improvements. Now, I know this probably sounds more like good intuition than good innovation, but I can assure you this is big news in our field. It's bringing unparalleled levels of transparency and accountability to the way we as a regulatory agency do our business. It's something that was admittedly started under the administration of Lawton Chiles, Governor Lawton Chiles in the state of Florida, and it has since been embraced by Governor Jeb Bush, a Republican administration in Florida. So it crosses partisan lines very, very readily because we all want more accountability and more transparency. It's a privilege for us to be able to present it to you, and we're hoping that in the time remaining, Lisa Edgar can give us some specific examples of where we've actually solved real problems in Florida.
Thank you. I want to give you one example of where the information that we've gained from our performance reporting requirement has actually helped us make change to make life better in Florida. Drinking water quality is one of the things that is a basic responsibility of government. we learned that we had 98% compliance from small operators in most areas of the state, but in a few areas it was only 85 to 89%, clearly not acceptable. Upon closer analysis, the data showed that some of the compliance problems were the result of something as simple really as small operators not taking the samples and submitting them in a timely manner. One of the steps that we took to address this problem is as simple as making phone calls to these operators to remind them that it's time. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about specifics about progress so we can have a little more complete picture if you,
Sure.
if you would.
Again, to finish my first example and then perhaps to go on, one of the steps we took is making calls to remind some of these small operators that it was time to submit their samples. We also created a sticker, distributed it, so something as simple as putting a small reminder on a water tap to remind people that it's time has made it so that when you come to visit Florida, if you go to some of these small operators, which could be churches, restaurants, bars, if you stop in there, get a glass of water, we can assure you that that water is safe. Another example is food safety. Food safety assurance is certainly another major primary function of government. In Florida, we are very proud of our seafood. One of the things that this performance measurement system showed us is that at shellfish processing plants, our compliance rate was, again, only about 85%, clearly not acceptable. Upon further analysis, we learned that one of the problems was inadequate and inconsistent training at some of these facilities. Now, working together with industry, we put together a plan for a unified, uniform training process, and we can now assure you that if you come to Florida and you stop off and you want to have some raw oysters, they will not make you sick. They will be safe and you will enjoy them.
Sounds very innovative, but it seemed like it was a real project and a commitment of the former governor. How committed and what indicators do we have that this new governor will continue to be committed to this program?
Good question. Thank you for asking it. When a new administration comes in, you get rid of some old programs, you get rid of some old personnel, and you're judged by that. You're also judged by what you embrace and what you enhance and what you promote. And this is one that we have embraced fully and completely. And the reason that's so important is because what this represents is a fundamental cultural and management change within a 25-year-old agency. I can tell you there are some line managers and line staff in the department who really were very uncomfortable, and probably some of them still are uncomfortable with this new level of accountability and transparency, actually being measured on a quarterly basis in terms of meeting their mission. The fact that there was a change in administration and the program didn't go away, but in fact has captured our attention and is being elevated and heightened, has, I think, put them on notice and frankly has put the country on notice that this new approach towards environmental performance management is here to stay.
It seems to me that this is the kind of management tool that a new administration can use effectively to reorder priorities within an agency. Could you give an example of how you used this when you came into office to change the priorities of the department?
Yeah, we actually chose not to do that because we felt that was really important, first and foremost, was to report on how we're actually meeting the missions we're given by law, by the legislature. We didn't want this to turn into an exercise where it was sort of the priority du jour. Rather, what are we legally required to provide the citizens of Florida, and how can we, on a quarterly basis, going on in perpetuity over the horizon, measure our results? So it's not priority setting as much as it is the delivery of basic service.
In your environmental performance measurement, do you identify polluters?
No, but we don't identify in the report the actual source of the pollution. But obviously we have all that material within the department in case there were ever a question. Did I get your question right?
I'm not sure. What do you measure if you don't measure the people who pollute?
We're measuring the ambient conditions.
The overall
conditions.
environment.
That's correct.
And you render a judgment on that.
Right.
You don't say that overall environment is harmed because point A or point B are the polluters.
No, the reporting is at 4 levels. How do we allocate our resources, which is a fairly basic one? How is behavior being changed? In other words, what are the compliance rates overall? We don't specifically name companies, but what are the overall compliance rates? Thirdly, what are the outputs and activities? How we're spending our time? Are we doing more enforcement? Are we doing more litigation? Are we doing more technical assistance? And then finally, and the most important one, is those ambient indicators.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.